The subject of this video is of course the recent Islamic terrorist attacks in Brussels, Belgium. What I would like to do is bring to light the massive and continuous failures of the security services in Belgium. I'm sure that after hearing and seeing some of this information, you will join me in disbelief that a nation's security, primarily that of its citizens, has been and are being handled so poorly. The information available shows a complete lack of care and respect to the public services and ultimately the government's duty, as the name suggests, to serve the public. In fact, the errors and oversights made during this continuous operation seem to indicate to me that these attacks were given the chance to come to fruition in an almost intentional manner and with the full knowledge of some of the members of government as well as other outside influences, which brings to our attention two of the brothers, Ibrahim on the left and Khalid on the right. In October of 2010, Ibrahim was sentenced to 9 years in prison for armed robbery of a stockbroker, where he also fired on the police with a Kalashnikov rifle, hitting an officer in the leg. Despite negative recommendations, he was released for probation in 2014. In July 14, 2015, he was caught by Turkish authorities attempting to cross into Syria. Turkish authorities then deported him to Amsterdam. However, he was not arrested on arrival. Turkish authorities claim to have informed the relevant authorities within the government and intelligence services within both the Netherlands as well as in Belgium. According to the Interior Minister Jan Jambon, the Belgian police liaison officer stationed at the Turkish embassy only forwarded the information onto Belgium 6 days later on July the 20th. Following his deportation to the Netherlands later in 2015, Belgian officials failed to construct what they deemed to be a strong case and instead they released Ibrahim, stating they had no clear evidence to link him with terrorism. Obviously, having illegal automatic rifles, stockpiling ammunition, attempting an armed robbery and firing at a public servant, as well as trying to cross into Syria, including with a warning directly from Turkish officials, depicts a perfectly innocent individual. A list of the brothers' crime prior to the airport attack: illegal firearms, armed robbery, attempted murder of a police officer, attempting to enter a war zone, Turkish warning sent, further information requested, FBI warning, captured in police raid and let go, airport, train terrorist attack. Now let's move on to the second brother, Khalid. Obviously wanted to maintain the family integrity. He also had a history of violent crimes on his belt. In October 27th of 2009, he and two accomplices kidnapped a bank employee, forced her to drive to a branch of AXA, a bank chain in Brussels. The men, who were armed once again with Kalashnikov rifles, forced the employee to deactivate the alarm system while they stole €41,000, or the equivalent of about $60,000 at the time. Not pleased with this effort, he carjacked an Audi S3 about 2 weeks after the prior bank heist. He was discovered later that night in Brussels inside a warehouse full of stolen cars. He was detained but was not charged. In September of 2011, the Belgian court system actually managed to convict him of criminal conspiracy, armed robbery, possession of stolen vehicles, and possession of weapons. He was given the sentence of 5 years in prison for these crimes. However, he was paroled in 2013 or 2014. A warrant was issued for his arrest again following his brother's detention in Turkey, presumably due to him breaching his parole conditions. It is believed that because of the warrant, he used an alias when renting an apartment in September of 2015 within Belgium, about 40 miles south of Brussels. This apartment was used as a safe house by some of the terrorists who carried out the November 13th attack in Paris. So a list of this brother's crimes: in October 27th, 2009, kidnapping, bank robbery, illegal firearm and ammunition; November 2009, carjacking, connection to organised crime, detained by police then set free; September 2011, convicted of criminal conspiracy, armed robbery, possession of stolen cars and weapons, sentenced to 5 years in prison. Between 2013 and 2014, paroled and released from prison. 2015, breached parole conditions, warrant issued for his arrest. His brother was also caught this time at the Turkish border. September 2015, he began renting an apartment within Belgium around 40 miles from Brussels, used an alias due to an outstanding warrant. The apartment was used as a safe house by some of the men who carried out the terrorist attacks in Paris on the 13th of November, following on from the events occurring on the 16th of March 2016. As mentioned previously, the FBI had issued a further warning to the authorities in Belgium, noting that they had been tracking the brothers, as well as presumably stating that they had links to terrorist organisations, as well as the intent to take part in an attack. Combined with the fact that the noose was closing on the so-called Paris attack mastermind, this terrorist cell had to be jumped on, as the possibility of capturing these wanted men was present. Police went to search an apartment in a forest on Tuesday afternoon. As they entered, they were fired upon by at least 2 occupants. 4 officers were wounded in total. Mohammed Belkaid was shot dead by police snipers that evening after attempting to fire on police from a window. Police found an Islamic State flag, jihadi/ultra-conservative Islamic literature, and you guessed it, Kalashnikov and ammunition. The prosecutor's spokesman said further searches were carried out near the apartment and more ammunition was recovered. Now, this is an important part. 2 suspects who were with Mohammed in the apartment somehow managed to escape and became the subject of a police manhunt. 2 men who were arrested later, including one who was brought to hospital with a broken leg, were released without charge. Now, there are numerous articles available online. Some state that the brothers were both caught and released. Some state one was caught and the other escaped, while others indicate that only one of the brothers was present, while the other man was indeed Salah Abdeslam, the head of the Paris attacks. What is clear is that an individual, regardless of who it was, escaped the scene of a police raid that had taken place in order to quell a terrorist threat. Despite that, they were in an apartment that had weapons, ammunition and numerous items linking them to extremist Islam and the Islamic State, and then they were set free. This information is even more incriminating if the person who was released was in fact one of the brothers who we have already covered. Now, although the media has portrayed mixed messages over the particular identities of the men, it is clear that such action is what I would deem to be out of the ordinary. 2 possible explanations is as follows. Number 1. The brothers were recruited as intelligence officers. Members of terrorist cells, or those that have had affiliation with radicals, are often approached by recruiters from intelligence agencies. They are offered shorter prison sentences or even removal of the entire sentence, while in turn they must agree to provide information to these agencies, essentially working undercover. This allows the person who is already integrated within the target organisation to relay information. It provides further insight into the inner workings, objectives, members and beliefs of the group, etc. Could this be the reason that the brothers received such small sentences for their crimes? Is this why they were overlooked repeatedly, despite having records that were quite clearly suspect? Number 2. Personal surveillance. The police or intelligence agencies may have placed the brothers under surveillance, using them to pull data from phone calls, emails, movements, to build a greater picture of the terrorist threat. This can be effective if members cooperate with smaller splinter groups. It can also aid in uncovering other illegal activities such as arms trafficking, militant cells at home and worldwide, as well as future targets. Perhaps this is why one of the brothers was supposedly released following the police raid on March the 16th, where they immediately placed under surveillance in hopes of one of them contacting Salah Abdeslam, thus leading the police straight to him. Whatever went on there, something is amiss, especially due to no action being taken following Turkey's warning, as well as the FBI information coming in prior to the raid itself. I strongly suspect one of the group members had links to Western intelligence agencies, either within Europe, or as it turns out now, perhaps the United States. It is possible the FBI sent the information regarding the surveillance of the brothers following the word of the planned raid in Belgium reaching them. Did they pass on the information that these men were being used to gather intelligence and that they would prefer they remained unharmed? Or were Belgium officials warned that the group was planning an attack on a nuclear power station? Because if the FBI had been monitoring them, then surely they would have been aware of this. A solid conclusion cannot be reached. Instead, we are given a glimpse of the jigsaw while left to force pieces together and see what might fit. The intelligence agencies certainly had some part to play in this. Prior to the raids, London placed its security services on high alert, deploying SAS troops onto the streets on the 15th of November, while also placing London as well as the other major cities on high alert. Moving on to the final point, which is the original target for the attacks, which, if you were unaware, was a nuclear power plant. The brothers' initial targets were nuclear power stations in Belgium. The brothers had gone as far as planting hidden cameras in front of the home of the directors of the Belgian nuclear research programme. The footage, with quoted dozens of hours of movement of the Belgian nuclear boss, was seized during an anti-terror raid in the apartment of another suspect belonging to the same terror cell. According to the investigators' information, the brothers were the ones suspected of planting the cameras and were following the movements of the nuclear boss. After analysing the video, investigators concluded that the target of the terrorist attack was to jeopardise national security like never before. I might also add that this particular nuclear site was not guarded by armed personnel. The impending threat of a dirty bomb being used via detonation of radioactive material is not a worry to Belgian authorities. Things get slightly stranger when on March the 26th of 2016, newspapers begin to report that a guard who worked at the nuclear plant had been murdered and that his access card had been stolen. Slightly after, more information came through, saying that the access card had been deactivated to prevent anyone from accessing the site illegally. However, later that same day, more news was released. Apparently, the murdered man did not work at a nuclear site, and no access card even existed, let alone had been deactivated. Now what follows gets even more bizarre. Police stated that they believed the crime to be a result of a runaway robber or crime in the private sector. The murdered man, named Didier Prospero, was a security guard working for G4S, a security firm that works across the world. He was found dead in his bathroom at his home by his 3 children. He was shot 4 times and his dog was also killed. Prospero worked at the National Institute of Radio Elements. He was in charge of security at the institute where he worked, which specialises in the production of radiochemical and radiopharmaceutical products, as well as in radioactive analysis, which sounds particularly nice for anyone wanting to make a dirty bomb. To wrap it up, we're left with a nice trail of breadcrumbs that lead straight off the edge of the cliff. The government were completely inept, and due to the nature of political correctness, feared to act further in case their actions resulted in more issues within the Muslim community. This is the equivalent of putting oil in a pan, setting it on fire and then going to bed hoping it will be alright. We have multiple intelligence agencies conversing with each other, yet the attack was still not prevented. We have the potential for outside influences being involved and influencing actions of the governmental authorities as well as public services. We have warnings sent by other countries, and last but certainly not least, the very real and looming risk of an attack on a nuclear power station.
Molenbeek is notorious as a fertile ground for radicalised Muslim youth, and hundreds of ISIL fighters have been recruited in this Brussels neighbourhood. The dangers have been well publicised, but the complaint is that too little has been done to effectively tackle the problem.
They're able to recruit these young people here because of the fragile economic, social and cultural situation that people here live in. But those who recruit them aren't just from Molenbeek. It has to be an international situation, because you can't buy Kalashnikovs in the local shop here.
There is a sense here in Molenbeek that despite occasional raids and high-profile policy statements from the government, the authorities have never got to grips with the radicalising elements within Belgium. Paris has changed all that. But will the police response drive a further wedge between the residents and the authorities, or will it bring new cooperation? Paul Brennan, Al Jazeera, Molenbeek, Brussels.